All right, guys, there's already a PowerPoint posted for these particular fill-in-the-blank notes, but I do want to go ahead and go through some of these problems with you because I think going through them may be a little bit more helpful than just reviewing the key or looking at the PowerPoint. So I'm going to let you guys do this whole portion by yourself. This scan is already posted, but let's go ahead and start with some of the problems that I have attached. So a ski jumper, let's move this over a little bit. A ski jumper moving down the hill had a potential energy of 6,500 joules. So we know that the potential energy is 6,500 joules. And a kinetic energy of 10,500 joules. What is her mechanical energy? Remember, all mechanical energy is potential plus kinetic energy. It's the total energy. And this isn't going to change. The ratios of these are the only things that are going to change. So all we have to do is we know mechanical energy is equal to potential energy plus kinetic energy. So mechanical energy is equal to 6,500 joules plus 10,500 joules. And you will get a total energy of 17,000 joules for your mechanical energy. All mechanical energy is saying is what's the total amount of energy. All right, flipping to the next page. Number 2 has a lot of work, but you should be able to do number 3 pretty easily after seeing this one. So a car weighing 5,500 kilograms travels at a speed of 15.2 meters per second up a hill. What is its mechanical energy? That's a lot to look at first. Okay, so let's real quick talk through what variables we have and then what potential equations we have. Okay, so the variables that we are given, and we are given the mass, which is 5,500 kilograms. Let's just go ahead and write down, first we're going to write down the variables. We also have the velocity or the speed of 15.2 meters per second. The one thing I did forget to give you guys, sorry, is a height of 15 meters. So this problem is going to be hard for you to solve. So if you didn't figure out this problem, that would be why. So we're going to solve it using 15 meters. And then what we have is we have our height, which I didn't give you, I apologize, of 15 meters. And we know that gravity is equal to 9.8 meters per second squared. So let's look at what equations we have. We know that kinetic energy is equal to 1/2 mass times velocity squared. We know that potential energy is equal to mass times gravity times height. And we know that mechanical energy is potential energy plus kinetic energy. So what can we solve for? Do we have the mass? Yes. Do we have velocity? Yes. Do we have the mass? Yes. Do we have gravity? Yes. Do we have the height? Yes. So we just need to solve for one of these first, and then we can solve for it from there. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and solve for kinetic energy first, but you could do it the other way, okay? So we know that kinetic energy is equal to 1/2 times mass times velocity squared. So kinetic energy is equal to 1/2 times the mass, which is 5,500, times the just velocity squared. Remember, we're not squaring this entire thing. 15.2 squared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type this into my calculator. 1/2 times 5,500 times, in parentheses, 15 squared, we get this big old number. And that is a kinetic energy of 618,750 joules. The next thing we can do is we are going to solve for potential energy, and then from there we can solve for mechanical. We know the potential energy is equal to the mass times gravity times height. So all we have to do is plug those in. The mass is 5,500. Gravity equals 9.8. and the height equals 15. So we're going to multiply this by gravity, which is 9.8, times the height, which is 15. We're going to plug this into our calculator, and we get 5,500 times 9.8 times 15. And you get a potential energy of 808,500 joules. So last but not least, from here, we can solve for mechanical energy. Mechanical energy, we know, is potential energy plus kinetic energy. So all we have to do is add these two numbers together. So 618,700 plus 808,500. We're going to add those numbers together. 808 plus 618,750. You will get a grand total mechanical energy of 1,427,250 joules. All right, let's go ahead and go through the second one together. It's very, very similar, okay? A volleyball with a mass of 0.5 kilograms is hit with a speed of 10 meters per second at a height of 10 meters. What is its mechanical energy? So first, let's go ahead and identify the variables. So what do we have? We have the mass is equal to 0.5 kilograms. We have the velocity, or the speed, is 10 meters per second. We have the height of 10 meters. And because we're on Earth, and I haven't said otherwise, we know that gravity is equal to 9.8 meters per second. So we got our variables. That's step one. Step two is we need to either solve for kinetic or potential energy. I typically will solve for kinetic first, but you can solve for potential if you'd like. So let's reverse it and solve for potential energy first. So potential energy. Potential energy is equal to the mass times gravity times height. We've got mass, we've got gravity, and we've got height. So all we have to do is multiply 0.5 kilograms times 9.8 meters per second squared times the height, which is 10 meters. So we have then potential energy is equal to 0.5 times this, you get a total of 49 joules. That's step two. Step three is we need to solve for the other energy, whether it's kinetic or potential. So this time we're going to solve for kinetic energy. And we know that kinetic energy is equal to 1/2 mass times velocity squared. So kinetic energy is equal to 1/2 times 0.5 kilograms times 10 meters per second, but we're going to square this entire thing. So the first thing that I would do is I would figure out what is 10 squared. You guys should already know this by heart, but if we do 10 squared, that's 100 times 0.5 times 1/2. So then we're going to do 0.5 times 0.5 times 100, and you will get a kinetic energy of 25 joules. Last but not least, since we have potential and kinetic energy, we can now solve for mechanical energy. And as a reminder, mechanical energy is equal to potential energy plus kinetic energy. So all we have to do is mechanical energy is equal to potential energy, which is 49 joules, plus kinetic energy, which is 25 joules. Our final answer will be mechanical energy equals 49 plus 25 gives you 74 joules. They're long problems, but they're totally feasible to do, okay? Now, the last problem I'm going to go ahead and do with you is number 4. Number 4 is asking you to fill in the missing values and assume no energy is lost due to friction. This entire diagram is exactly what's showing you how much mechanical energy there is, okay? Remember, the mechanical energy is going to be the same in every single location. The only thing that's going to change is the ratios of the potential energy and the kinetic energy. And just remember that gravitational potential energy is the exact same thing as potential energy. It just means it's happening on Earth. So what I would do first is we need to find out what the mechanical energy is, okay? We know that the mechanical energy is 15 joules, okay? And because of that, We know that mechanical energy is going to be the exact same thing because this is the exact same system. So we can actually go ahead and fill in that these are each 15 joules. Now, what you find here, though, is because there's a mechanical energy of 15 joules, I'm going to zoom in here for you. Because there's a mechanical energy of 15 joules and there's a potential energy of 0 joules, it means that the kinetic energy is going to be really high. So the kinetic energy then will be 15 joules because this plus this equals this, okay? So same idea. This plus this equals this. So 15 minus the kinetic energy, which is 7, gives us the potential energy, which is 8 joules. So 15 minus 7 equals 8. Last but not least, we already filled this in. Mechanical energy equals 15. He's got a lot of potential energy. If he has all the potential energy is equal to the mechanical energy, that means that the kinetic energy is going to be 0. So 15, which is the total mechanical, minus 15 is equal to 0. Alrighty. Now I real quick want to talk about these next pages with you. These look like a lot, but this is the exact same thing that you are going to be doing as that last page. The only exception is that we know that we have a mass, and we also know that we have gravity is equal to 9.8. So what I will do with you is I'm going to go ahead and do number 1 and 2. If we have a potential energy of 20 and a kinetic energy of 0, what is the mechanical energy? 20 plus 0 equals 20 joules. Here at number 2, I don't give you anything, and that's where it gets hard. Okay, so number 1's done. Number 2 is right here. So for number 2, let's first break down what variables we have. We know that the mass is going to be 0.5 kilograms. So mass is equal to 0.5 kilograms. We know that the height is equal to 3 meters. And we know that gravity is equal to 9.8 meters per second squared. So, given these variables, what can we solve for? We've got mass, height, and gravity. We can solve for potential energy. So potential energy equals mass times gravity times height. So, in order to solve this, we would do the mass, which is 0.5 kilograms, times gravity, which is 9.8 meters per second squared, times the height, which is 3 meters. When you type this into your calculator, you will get 14.7 joules of potential energy. So what you can do here is you can put 14.7 joules. Now, we already know this is the exact same system. It's the exact same roller coaster. The mechanical energy is going to be 20 joules. So how could I solve for this kinetic energy? This kinetic energy would be the same thing as saying 20 joules, or the mechanical energy is equal to potential energy plus kinetic energy. So 20 joules is equal to 14.7 plus x, or the kinetic energy. So we subtract this from this. It's the exact same thing as saying 20 minus 14.7, and you will get 5.3 joules. So after going through that with me, you should be able to solve for these next two. The final problems on the back side are doing the exact same thing as what I did for you at the beginning. If you have any extra questions, please come in and see me for help.